let me know when there's a... Hey. I'm Georgia. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
I'm going to let you most of it. Yes, sir. I'll just come back and get Jackson. This is a great turnout.
Thank you. And we also have live streams, so we'll be up all through the building. And then this is how we record. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. We have a whole lot of people from the Henrico County different offices, and they're going to introduce themselves as they speak. And I just am really pleased to welcome them here. So please join me as we welcome them to Cedarfield.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be back here. I can tell you in my career, we've been involved in a number of referenda, what we're talking about today, and you all in this community has been so open-armed and grateful to come in, and we always generate a good crowd. And your facility, I think it gets more beautiful by the year as we come, but we really do appreciate the time. I'll tell you, we brought a number of folks with us, county staff who are subject matter experts on some of the subjects here. I do want to point out, though, we're also blessed to have the Honorable Tommy Brannon, who is the board member from the Three-Shot Magisterial District, who's with us this afternoon as well, and I'm sure he'll come up and speak on several topics. At least one I know is near and dear to his heart when we get to the public safety question. But again, thanks for the opportunity. We apologize for getting started a little bit late. We were just coming back from another meeting down the street from here that went a little longer than expected. I'll tell you, we have now 124 at last count of these meetings in the community, talking with people. And I did count this morning because I can't help myself. I think this is our 44th. So we have a number left. We actually have another one this evening where we're having our first, what we're calling a county-wide meeting, where we, Eastern Henrico Rec Center, where we've invited the entire county to come participate. They'll also have a virtual option as well, so feel free to tune in there as well, although you're getting it firsthand today, and again, greatly appreciated. We'll start with introducing staff, and I think maybe we want to come up to the microphone and introduce everyone. But again, my name is Brandon Hinton. I'm the Deputy County Manager for Administration for Henrico County. Alex, do you want to start?
Hey, thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Alex Siebold, and I'm a budget analyst with the county's finance department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rick Schwartz. I'm the Chief Design Engineer for Public Works, and I'm in charge of all the plan review and public design in the county.
Hello, everybody. I'm a senior design engineer with Department of Public Works, and my focus is in hydraulics and hydrology.
And your name?
My name is Ben Felton.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Zanino. I'm with the Recreation and Parks Department. I'm the Assistant Director for Park Operations.
Good afternoon. I'm Jackson Boehner. I'm Assistant Fire Chief for the Fire Department. I got my helpers back there, Jack and Landon, here too, so they're helping us out today.
Good afternoon. I'm Tommy Brennan. I'm the Supervisor for the Three-Chop District. When Henrico comes, we come. Brandon has been doing a fantastic job going around explaining exactly what the bond referendum is. Most of you know exactly where we're at with bonds, our track record with bonds. And we're going to review some of the projects from A to Z and what they'll be categorized on the bond referendum. I will stay around and answer any questions. I know you may have some questions about 3CHOP that we've all been waiting to be done out front. We're still doing some work on Deep Run Park behind you. So any questions that you have in regards to that, I'll be happy to answer. And thank goodness I've got this unbelievable team. And I didn't even know the team was going to be here. I thought it was just going to be Brandon and I. So I'm going to let Brandon take over, and then we'll all be here for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Holly Coy, and I'm the Chief of Staff for Henrico County Public Schools. I'm delighted to be with you on behalf of our school system today.
And Holly, how many days have you been on the job now?
This is week 4.
Week 4. Week 4. So Holly's new to Henrico, and we're lucky to have her here. So that's the crew, as Mr. Brandon mentioned. We bring a crew with us. We want to make sure that we give you all accurate and information and answer all of your questions, frankly. We brought all the subject matter experts with her to do that. I mentioned earlier we have 124 meetings on the books. That is entirely intentional. This team's goal is to educate as many people as we possibly can on what we call a bond referendum coming forward this fall. So as you go vote this fall, your ballot, it's not just a congressional candidate on your ballot. You're going to have 4 individual questions on the ballot as well that represent 4 different functional areas. One for schools, one for public safety, one for recreation and parks, and one for drainage. As we have a number of drainage problems, as you'll hear Mr. Schwartz talk about more in a moment around Henrico County. But I want to start off with why we choose 4 questions. We have other localities in the region that also have what's called a bond referendum in play this fall as well, who have chosen 1 question, or some that choose less than what we've chosen. We've chosen 4, as we've always chosen, to split our questions into individual functional categories, because we believe it's the most transparent way to engage with our citizens, but it's also, we believe, the most democratic. For example, if you go to the polls and you agree with the schools projects and you decide to vote yes, you have all the right to do so. And if you feel maybe the drainage question is not something we should do, you can vote no on. That's entirely something that you can choose to do so. Other localities decide to package all of their questions into 1 question, and it's either a yes or no for everything, and we've just decided that's not the most transparent way and not the most democratic way to go about a bond referendum. Backing up a second, how many of you voted in the 2016 Henrico County election? So a lot of you familiar with what a bond referendum is. The last one we had, 2016, we had 5 questions on the ballot. All 5 questions passed with at least 75% positive rate, which is by far the most successful referendum this county has ever had. You look around you, you can see the results of that referendum. You can't help but drive down Parham Road and see Tucker High School. That was a bond project. If you go into Highland Springs and see the new high school at Highland Springs, Mr. Brandon noted Deep Run Park. There's a lot of construction activity going on at Deep Run. That was also a product of the 2016 bond referendum. So you'll see assets all around us. You go down the street here, where my kids go to school at Pemberton Elementary School, got a substantial renovation, and it looks entirely different. The school next to it, Quaxon Middle School, is actually on the ballot this fall. It's one of the projects we're going to be talking about more in a moment. So this is what referenda do. And why we put these on a ballot and come before you is multifaceted. First and foremost, the state of Virginia, for us to issue what's called general obligation bonds. It's a very fancy term for the absolute cheapest bonds or debt that a county can incur, GO bonds for short. The only way counties can issue these is with your approval. And that's entirely intentional, set up by the state. Counties have to go through this process called a referendum to the voters to get approval to do this. Cities don't have to. Cities can go forward and issue these bonds at will. We actually feel like that's a pretty good opportunity, because coming out and talking to you folks, talking to 124 meetings, and really understanding, and this isn't just a one-time thing. Mr. Brandon, the board, they're listening to you all the time, and we have the most responsive board of supervisors, I think, in the state, if not the country. I think you all know that. If you've ever reached out to your board member, I promise you got a response. They know the needs of the community, the desire of the community. That's the foundation of what a bond referendum is. The projects that you see on the brochures you have in your lap and that we'll go through, these all came from you all and from staff who know where the challenges are in our school system, from staff who know where the problems are for drainage. But it's all intentional. It's a way of improving quality of life, or trying to improve quality of life for our citizens. But that's why we're asking the questions. It's simply giving us the authorization to issue bonds. I'll go also tell you that Henrico, we have a triple A rating, bond rating. And what that means is the three largest rating agencies in the country, Fitch, Moody's, and S&P, for many, many years now have decided that Henrico County has the top tier ability to pay their bonds back, and they've rated us as such. So AAA means it doesn't get any higher, although we've been told, Alex, in rating calls that if there was a fourth A possible, then Henrico was deserving of that, which was a huge compliment to Henrico and how we handle our fiscal affairs. But there are 3,000 counties in the country. Only 48 have a AAA rating. We're one of those 48. So that means that when we issue bonds, general obligation bonds, we get the lowest possible interest rate, meaning we can build large things like a new Tucker High School, like our Pemberton Elementary School renovation, these large projects at the very lowest cost to you, the taxpayer. So that's why we're going to referendum. And please feel free, instead of this being a lecture, I'd love for this to be a conversation. So as you have questions, if you want to shout out, raise your hand, please. We'll address those questions. I see we have a microphone back here as well. You guys really do prepare for everything. It's very, very appreciative. So 6 years ago, we had a referendum. We have issued all the bonds from that referendum. Again, you can see the product and the results of it. But as every year we pay off our bonds, the amount of debt that the county owns and is paying on continues to fall. As you can see in the blue behind you, that's our existing debt service, our existing obligations, if you will. What a new referendum does, and this is successful debt management at its finest. As you pay off debt with new bonds, we simply fill in gaps where we're paying off old and adding new. That's what good governments do. It allows us to get large projects that are needed now, done now, and not having to wait many years down the road until we save enough money to do so. For example, Tucker High School alone was $120 million. To achieve a $120 million project takes years and years of saving. And no other project, just that one. And that's why it's like a mortgage, if you will. Like you mortgage a house and you're paying off your mortgage payment over time. That's exactly what Henrico is doing with its debt. I mentioned earlier 4 questions on the ballot. We're going to get into individual projects. I know this thing on the right is very hard to see. We just got in sample ballots yesterday, so we now know very closely what the ballots are going to look like this fall. Yes, everything is on the front of the ballot. That's always a concern for us, and having to remember to flip that ballot over. But you will see 4 questions. In total, the bond referendum is $511 million that we would try to issue over 6 years. If we can't issue over 6 years, we have the authorization to issue over 8 years. So as you all know, the economy is doing some weird things. If we find ourselves in some economic difficulty, or if interest rates rise to the point where it doesn't make sense for Henrico to issue bonds, we don't have to issue bonds. With the Board of Supervisors' concurrence, we can skip a year and wait till things normalize a little bit. Our goal is to issue over 6, but we have authorization for 8. And if we petition the courts, we could actually go out to 10 years. But the existing plan is to do that over 6 years. Of the $511 million, 2/3 of this amount would be allocated to our school system, $340.5 million. So a significant, yet again, another significant investment in our schools. And again, we'll talk about more about those projects in a moment. You'll see a question for about $84 million for public safety on there, $37 million for recreation and parks, and then $50 million in a topic that's relatively new to the county. It's been on a referendum before many years ago, but it's the area of drainage, which has become a significant challenge in Henrico County, a significant quality of life issue. So that's why you're seeing this on the ballot. You'll hear more about it in a moment. Any questions before we go into the specific projects? All right, we'll begin with our schools projects, and Holly, I'll go through unless you want to tackle. So we have, believe it or not, over half of Henrico County schools are 50 years old or older. There was a lot of growth 50, 60 years ago. There was a lot of infrastructure created, but you fast forward 60 years, and now that infrastructure is aging. If you recall, for those of you that raised your hand for 2016, there were a lot of school renovations on that list. This referendum would continue upon that success and that momentum. There are 5 schools, all built in the 1960s, with one in 1970, that have some significant challenges. And the intent here is for 4 of these schools, Davis Elementary School, which isn't too far from here, Highland Springs Elementary School, Longin Elementary School, and then I mentioned Quaxon Middle School just down the street here. All of those 4 schools would be knocked down and rebuilt. There's a reason for that. They pose a number of challenges with the campus-style schools. Quaxon Middle School is not campus, but there are significant challenges with that school if you haven't been on that campus. There are a lot of stairs, a lot of elevation changes, ADA compliance issues, things that are would cost more to fix than to simply knock down and rebuild. And believe it or not, that is the most expensive project on this referendum. It's $89 million for Quaxon Middle School alone. So again, taking advantage of a bond referendum to do significant good with aging infrastructure. There's also a school renovation with Johnson Elementary School. That was built in the 1950s, I believe. It's on the screen. It has a number of infrastructure challenges, HVAC challenges, among many others. So $27 million being allocated to renovate that school. In addition to taking care of older infrastructure, the referendum would also build 2 new elementary schools, one in this district. Actually, Mr. Brandon championed hard for this school with the school board. I remember several board retreats in which this topic was a topic of conversation. Pre-COVID, you look at school capacity, elementary school capacity in the county. Before COVID, the most overcapacity school we had was Holiday Elementary School in the Brooklyn Magisterial District. Well, the 16 referendum allowed us to expand that school, and it is no longer having the capacity challenges that it had pre-COVID because of the additional space. But if you look at the top 11 most at capacity or overcapacity elementary schools in the county, 5 of those are in the Three Chop Magisterial District. So the thought being, if this referendum passes, we're going to build a new elementary school on land in the Three Chop District, somewhere in the, we're looking somewhere Pouncey Tract area, Mr. Brandon. I know we've looked at several sites and still looking for that correct site. But the need is there, and all the growth, as you recall, with some of the redistricting conversations we've had, a lot of the growth continues in the Three Chop Magisterial District. So we know that not only is there a need now, there will be a need going forward. The second elementary school would actually be in the Fairfield Magisterial District. You all are familiar with Virginia Center Commons. If you actually were to drive by Virginia Center Commons, you would recognize it today. With the board's support, we're building a $50 million indoor sports facility out there, and is an anchor for a number of residential developments coming into that community, as well as some new hotels and restaurants, and really changing the entire mall area into what's more like an urban mixed-use development. But the residential component, we expect to have elementary school kids coming out of that development. And there's a development across the street across Route 1 called River Mill that is well underway and currently being occupied, that's generating quite a few elementary school kids as well. And we own a piece of land in that development, in the River Mill development, where this elementary school would be located. So again, we're trying to stay ahead of many localities struggle with staying ahead of capacity issues because of the cost. You can look in this region and see localities that struggle to keep up with capacity, and what you end up with are over capacity classrooms. Teachers that are teaching classes that are 40 kids or more. We try to stay ahead of that curve, and that's what this referendum is continuing to help us get through. The last project on the schools question is an entirely unique project called an environmental living building out at a piece of land that the Board of Supervisors allowed us to purchase, authorized us to purchase several years ago, called Wilton Farm. A living building means that it will actually produce more electricity on site than it uses, meaning that it literally has a living component to it. It will add more power to the grid than it uses. It will be a very green building, one that we can bring elementary school kids in, kids from across the county to teach about environmental science, but would also be a support for a new specialty center, an environmental studies specialty center at Verona High School that's starting up in a couple weeks with the start of the school year. Believe it or not, this facility is so unique, it would be the first of its kind in a K-12 setting in the Americas, in North and South America. They do exist in university settings, they do not exist in public school settings. So again, one more thing to separate our school system from others across not just the country, but continents here. So something very special that could come out of this referendum. Any questions on the schools projects? That wraps up the projects on that question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm thinking about the Regency Square area where all these apartments are going in. What schools are they going to be going to?
Yes, ma'am. So, and Mr. Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not anticipated that a lot of kids would come out of those apartments. But they will have some, and there's existing capacity at the schools that are around. So Pemberton Elementary School, for example, I have a kid that's going to Pemberton. It's not quite a capacity. It has enough capacity to handle that. And Pinchback is down the street as well. There's a number of schools. And Mr. Brandon, do you want to?
Freeman would be the high school for that area. Douglas Freeman would be the high school for that area. And you may not recognize, because every time they say it, I have to rattle my head, Quackison is Bird. So Bird's being redone. So that whole area there's extra capacity coming on with Quackison. Freeman is not at capacity, they're fine. So it is that central West End is covered with schools.
And I just wanted to know, when you say you were going to be rebuilding Cuyahoga, what happens to the students? Do they do the trailers, or what are they doing with them?
No, ma'am. So that's a great question, and one that we've gotten quite a bit in these community conversations. So there's adequate space to build Quackson Middle School without tearing down the old. So the kids will be in their existing classrooms until the new school is open. They'll simply move over to the new school, and then they'll start knocking down the existing structure. What they have to do is move some of the athletic fields, and that's all part of the plan to reestablish that school and rebuild it.
Okay.
Which if you watched what we did at on Parham with Tucker, it's exactly the same. Actually, with Tucker, everybody said, "Oh, you can't do that," and we said, "We think we can." We moved the school forward. We bought some of the houses to provide enough land for drainage and etc., and we built the school back into the fields, and then the school came down and the fields went there, and it would be the same at Quax. Okay.
The question is, who decided this process? Who makes these decisions, and who makes the final decision of what's included in this bond referendum for the schools?
So we have funded every single project requested by the school board. So the school board prioritizes, they go through what's called a capital improvement plan each year, and they go through the process of prioritizing what the most necessary schools are now. And if you go in, they do a 10-year CIP, so you could actually go online. And Holly here can help you find it as well. And they actually have a prioritization for 10 years. And so they're taking, what this referendum does is taking the highest priority projects of the school board and asking public for funding for those projects. And I always like to say that referenda build on each other, because the 2016 referendum was successful. We were able to get a lot of projects knocked down or underway. There's still a few that are underway. So that allowed us to get to this next phase and knock these projects out and into the next phase at a future referendum. But that decision is made by the school board going forward. There was a vote to ask our board to consider, Mr. Brandon and his colleagues, to consider having a referendum. But those projects were determined by the school board. Yes, sir.
It appears to me that every square inch of land out here in the county is being built up with apartment houses and townhouses, and they include a lot of kids. What's going to happen down the road? How are you going to keep up with this growth, school kid growth?
I got it.
That one.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And the Three Chop District started with Mr. Cackley building well-developed, well-designed neighborhoods, and that did bring. It made Henrico, this area that you live in, we're ranked number 3 in the state, best place to live, and number 23 in the nation, best place to live this year. So we have been watching that. We've been working with schools. We have an elementary school planned, and it will be announced soon where that will be. And we also have a high school that you'll hear about in a few minutes. We've been keeping up, and as we get close, schools yells, okay, we're there. So I can tell you, as for the Cuyahoga district and as for the Three Chop district, we're pretty much done developing. There's not much more that that I'm personally interested in developing. What you've seen in the last 4 projects that have come forward in Henrico Three Chop district have all been age restricted because there is a desire and need in that housing sector for maintenance free. I mean, you guys have it made here because there's no maintenance and everything else, but there is also a need for people that want to get out of the 4,000 square foot, 5,000 square foot house, 3,000 square foot house, and have maintenance free. So we have been pushing for the development community, if they want to develop that kind of development. So we're already making the transition. Did that answer your question?
Every time these developments come forward as well, staff notes school, any school impacts too. So they're keeping tabs always. To Mr. Brandon's point. Any other questions on the schools question, guys? All right. Well, moving on from schools. Thank you, Mr. Brandon. Moving on to public safety. Actually, I want to invite Jackson up. I'll put him on the spot a little bit. Jackson Boehner, Assistant Chief in Fire, to come talk about some of the needs within our fire department.
I'm a little shorter than Brandon by about a foot and a half, so I had to move the mic there. But yeah, no, it's a really exciting time for us in fire, EMS, and public safety as we look forward for the next 20 years. One of the issues is our firehouses. When these firehouses were originally designed back in the 60s and early 70s, we were not in the emergency medical services business. We didn't have transport units to take people to the hospital then. We relied on our volunteer rescue squads. There were 3 of them in the county at the time, and they did all the transports. Well, around 1988, the county recognized that there was more of a need to make sure we had ambulances and medic units available to take people to the hospital that were sick. And time is really important with that. Right now, we only have 4 firehouses in the county that don't have a transport unit, a medic unit in those firehouses right now. And we recognize that time is so important when it comes to someone having a heart attack, having a stroke, a diabetic emergency, any of those things. We need to make sure we have the right resources there in a timely manner. If we look, these firehouses, they didn't have the space for these medic units in mind when they were built. So over the years, we've had to get very creative with how we stack our units in there. And that can be a time-sensitive issue. Particularly if we look at Firehouse 6, which is Laburnum and Gay Avenue. It's stacked with 3 units and 11 people in there for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The engine and it's one of our busiest stations too. The engine and medic units, they shuffle around. So if a medic goes out, it might be parked behind the engine pulls out, the medic goes out, the engine backs in, then the medic backs in when they come. So it's constantly shuffling units. Another unique thing is Firehouse 1. So that originally was just an engine company there. Now this station has really grown into one of our subject matter experts go-to for when we have technical rescue. So when really bad things happen, trees on houses, tractor trailers colliding, swift water rescue, and Rick will talk about some of the drainage issues. So we know that we have drainage issues, and sometimes we have swift water that cars get stuck in. This is one of our firehouses that goes to help those people. And we have to store some equipment outside right now. We have a large tractor trailer that helps shore up buildings when cars go into them, but it's outside. It's an aging firehouse. Again, we have 11 people here. Something consistent with all of our firehouses is that our workforce is changing. It's really over the last 15 years, it's becoming more like our community. This also means that we have more women in our fire department than we've ever had before, which is fantastic. But just like when I was a rookie about 20 years ago, my first captain was Captain Debbie Weymouth. And I was at Firehouse 7, which was on one of the 2 bonds ago, got rebuilt. We had one bathroom and a bunk room where the bunks were separated maybe by a locker. And that's not really a good environment, especially as we have a diverse workforce. So all the teenage firehouses, which are 14, which is in the East End, 15, which is in Glen Allen, 16, which overall is Knuckles Road, and 17, which is off of near Gaskins, near River Road. They all need to be updated to make sure we accommodate all the workforce that we have now. In addition, we know that cancer is a killer of firefighters, so there's a lot of different initiatives over the last 10 years as we've gotten smarter about how we store our gear, where we put our gear, the type of exhaust removal systems that we have in place. Physical fitness. We know that when we need to go from 0 to 60 very quickly, that we have to be in good cardiovascular shape. So make sure we have an area of fitness for the folks to work out daily. And all these firehouses right now, it's either an old sort of closet or it's in the back of the apparatus bay where physical fitness takes place, which isn't a good thing. So we're really excited about the potential to update these firehouses and bring it to the 21st century. We're doing a good job. We have one of the last ones in the last bond, Firehouse 20, which is off of Staples Mill Road. We're just waiting on some bay doors. Building supply chain has been a bit of an issue, but that'll be opening here in October, hopefully, and we're excited about that. One of the other public safety projects is more collaborative too. If we look at our training needs, our training center where we train our firefighters and some of our police officers come train there too, is old and outdated. Building construction has changed so much over the last 30 years. As Mr. Brandon alluded to, the filling up with different commercial businesses, different styles of business. If we look at Short Pump, Green Gate, all sorts of different stuff. And we need to probably develop a training center that resembles our community so that our firefighters, when they go to these new condos that are 2 over 2 or our mixed urban use where we have commercial on the bottom and then we have residential up top with apartments, we need to make sure we prepare our folks to respond to emergencies so they can be doing it in a more timely manner. And this is not just for us in fire, but also as our police officers have to deal with ever-changing threats and security threats in our community. They can train in buildings so they can be more familiar, so they can also have a very timely response. In addition, we recognize that as a region, we continue to collaborate on lots of things. We have sent our folks to Chesterfield to train in their new training center that they have for fire because it's 6 stories tall, and we have some taller buildings now we need to be prepared for. Likewise, we would assume that we would extend invitations to Chesterfield, Hanover, Richmond to come share in our training center so we can all prepare together to be better prepared to respond to emergencies. And I'll leave the animal shelter, I think, for Mr. Brandon or Brandon. And I have learned a lot about it too. I'm pretty excited about this animal shelter.
Yeah. So this is Mr. Brandon's baby here. It's a project that's incredibly necessary in Henrico County. So we have the final project that rounding out the public safety project list is an animal shelter. And it's actually what's called a no-kill shelter or humane shelter is what the proposal is. It's land currently owned in the Three Shot Magisterial District. We bought this land back in 2008 off Kane Road that we haven't touched since then, and the intention is to open this piece of land up. And we've got a couple projects we're going to talk about here this afternoon on that piece of property. And so the intent of the no-kill shelter is much like we've done other infrastructure around the county, where the county is going to pay for the facility to open. We're going to build it, and then we're going to have a third party operate it. And Mr. Brandon has been instrumental in developing the relationships with the Henrico Humane Society to actually come and operate that facility. The intent is back of house, veterinary services, all the typical things that an animal shelter is going to need, but front of house being an adoption center, a true adoption center where families can come in and play with animals, play with dogs, cats, recognize if they're a good fit for their families. And sorry, my phone's making noise. Stop that. So that's the intent of this facility. Mr. Brandon, do you want to add any more to it?
Real quick, some of what Jackson was talking about with the firehouse. Firehouse 19 off of North Gayton, which is near where this no-kill shelter will be, was a bond referendum with 2005. In that firehouse, it was the first firehouse that was built that there's independent rooms for every EMS and firefighter. The other part that he didn't add was the single bunk room. Now that we're so diversified in what we do with ambulance and EMS, that when a fire would happen, everybody would have to wake up and EMS wouldn't be going out. When EMS was called out, everyone would have to wake up. So it was also a lot of stress on our first responders. In regards to this no kills, our animal control building is very outdated, and Henrico has been hugely successful with partnering with the private sector. We started with the Humane Society. I started about a year and a half ago, talking to them about what if we built, could you manage, could you run? And they were already working on finances for themselves to do exactly the same thing. So by being able to join forces, we'll be able to keep the tax rates down and have a shelter that will be for cats, dogs. Now, the most important part is we have a no name for it yet. So if everyone would go online, come up with the best name you can, and it's nametheshelter.com, and give us your suggestions. So far we've got, I think, about 250 suggestions, and then if this is approved by the bond, we will announce the new name that whoever came up with will get all the credit. So I think that covers the animal shelter. And you'll see in one of the slides where it sits. It sits in a park that is also part of where the new high school will go. So it's one whole 227 acres that the county has.
And Mr. Brandon alluded to something, and I want to make sure to swing back around to it. He mentioned these strategies to keep taxes low. I failed to mention earlier, I think it's critically important. There are no tax rate implications with this bond referendum. We can afford this through existing resources. Again, we've been on the road quite a bit doing this and a lot more to go. That question seems to come up a lot, and I want to make sure to emphasize to you all that you are not going to see an increase in any of your taxes. In fact, with Mr. Brandon's help, of course, and his colleagues, we just reduced tax rates, both our real estate with some credits as well, and then our personal property tax. We've had some credits too, because we all have felt the pain of increased personal property taxes and so forth. So if anything else, this board's going to continue their continued efforts of reducing taxes, not increasing. I do want to emphasize that. Those are all the projects that round out the public safety question. I'll kind of take a moment. Are there any questions from you all? Yes, ma'am.
Where is Firehouse number 1?
So Firehouse number 1 by the Richmond Raceway. I'll get to the mic to make sure. I'm pretty loud, but right by the Richmond Raceway and Azalea Avenue.
And Jackson, how much, question to you that I'm going to ask, how much does Henrico County charge for EMS pickups?
Mr. Brandon, I'm so glad you asked that question, sir. We covered this at our last meeting, our last place. But one of the concerns, I have a dad that's older that doesn't live in Henrico County, and he gets very upset and he has to activate 911. And when he goes to the hospital in another jurisdiction, he gets a bill. Here in Henrico County, thanks to our board of supervisors and the continued vision, there is no bill when you call 911 and you need to go to the hospital. We're there for you. We take you to the hospital. We take care of you and do what's right. Now, I think that's something that we can brag about because we're one of the very few localities that does not bill for EMS services. Thank you, sir.
And we are very grateful to the EMS people who are here frequently. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you. I think one of the great things too is the relationship that our firehouses have. So Station 22 and Station 9 or Regency Firehouse come here a lot. But the relationship with the staff here and how responsive they are, the information they get us rapidly. We're able to work through fire alarms very quickly, some small cooking fires, and then our EMS calls here too. And so we have a great relationship with the staff and the residents here too. We've come to know also. So thank you, ma'am.
The reason I brought that up, my in-laws are 93, and every time they get called, they live in Prince William County. I'm amazed on what it costs. And they live 5 miles from the hospital, and it's $5,000 every time they call. So we do it right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're actually, Henrico is the only large locality, maybe the only locality in the state that doesn't charge, right, Mr. Brand?
Yeah, still.
Yes, sir. Any other questions on public safety before we move forward? All right, remember, each of these questions, these are each individual questions on the ballot. Your schools, public safety. Now, recreation and parks will be your third question on the ballot. You'll find a question for $37 million tied to recreation and parks. You can see the 3 parks that we're going to touch behind me. There's a park in Verina on the James River that we've owned for a very long time now, but it needs a lot of help. It's been beaten down pretty good, and it's Deep Bottom Park. If you haven't been out there, it's a gorgeous place. There's a boat ramp, 650 feet of riverfront property, and then we're going to redo the entire shoreline there as well. We're going to add picnic shelters, so that if you want to take your families for a picnic on the James, you have an opportunity to do so. A lot of fishing that happens out there, a lot of activity, and there's been a strong desire from the community to see some improvements in that area. This bond referendum would, if approved, would take care of that need. A second project, if you're not familiar with Tuckahoe Creek Park, which is not too far from here, is an amazing park. I highly encourage you to go out if you haven't. The intent here is to do the final leg of that park. And believe it or not, and this is a very true statement, the intent here is to take that boardwalk, that beautiful boardwalk, and make it all the way from Patterson Avenue all the way to Broad Street. So to extend that boardwalk that far, but also address the parking situation. If you all have been there, you may have also had to park in some of the residential areas in that community. It goes without saying, the residents of that community aren't very happy with all the traffic. So this $5 million allocation would address A, the boardwalk and extension, but also B, and most importantly to that community, the parking situation, and try to figure out a permanent solution there. And then the final project within Recreation and Parks, Mr. Brandon alluded to, in the Three-Shot Magisterial District, on the same land that would be co-located with the animal shelter, the same Kane Road property that Mr. Brandon alluded to earlier, would be a new athletic village. And you all know the sports tourism impact this county has had. We've had a lot in the 2016 referendum. We continue to enhance upon that. The more visitors we have in Henrico, they bring their money into Henrico. They spend a lot of money in Henrico. The more that happens, the least tax burden on our citizens. It's entirely strategic. This is a continuing to enhance our sports tourism portfolio. But Mr. Brandon also alluded to, and this is where it gets really unique, and it was mentioned that the amount of land in Henrico is becoming less and less. This is where Mr. Brandon, the board, and the school board working together. You'll see on this, and I think he's going to go point to it now, there is a site on this property for a future, it's not on this referendum, on a future referendum for a new high school. We know it's coming, we know we're going to need it. This would be your site for a new high school. But what's incredibly unique here is this athletic village that we're building. We have the foresight to understand there's a high school coming, so it would be shared fields. Again, being cognizant of the fact that land is becoming more scarce. We can use this facility on the weekends now, during the week now for tourism, but also when the high school is built at some point in the future, the high school can co-locate these fields, can jointly use these fields where the high school is using it during the week and we're having tourism opportunities coming on the weekend. So again, it's a unique strategy, but you can see the way this piece of land is parceled.
And the animal shelter.
The animal shelter is in the corner. Yes, sir. So again, it's visionary from this board working with the school board and figuring out these solutions. But that's what this parcel is intended to do. Again, this is all in the three-shot magisterial district, northwest off Kane Road, across from Firehouse 19. Any questions on the recreation and parks question? All right, rounding out your bond referendum, the fourth question, you can see some of the impact of drainage concern. This is actually a house in Verina during a recent storm. But Rick, do you mind coming up and talking about some of the challenges that we've had with drainage in the community?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So last time we did a bond referendum for drainage was 1984. So it's been almost 40 years since we had one. The $50 million is basically a start to help us try to address a lot of drainage issues that we've dealt with over the last few years. The last few years, you've probably noticed we've been some of the wettest on record, especially in Henrico County. We have over 5,000 drainage issues that we've been actively working on to solve, and most of them are residential drainage issues where there's maybe ditches are clogged or pipes are clogged. There's even been one over here off of Pell Street that I've been involved with where the ditch along 3 Chop would flood from time to time during rainfall events, and water would go down Pell Street and along the back of different properties. So to solve those things, what we have to do is we have to prepare a plan, we have to survey it, we have to get easements from time to time from citizens, and that's really the biggest challenge, is trying to get easements, because a lot of times we have public easements for drainage, for anything that has public water going through it on the roads, or maybe some easements down like a property. But sometimes these properties were developed back in the 1950s before we got easements. Sometimes there's issues with floodplain where houses were built prior to the ordinance being put into effect in 1981. So there are over 1,200 houses in the floodplain that experience drainage issues, on a daily basis. And we basically have tried to be working with them to solve those issues. So the $50 million basically will help us move ahead with small, medium, and large projects where we can try to help citizens solve these drainage issues. Whether it's designing a pipe system to take water from a subdivision out around houses so they're not getting flooded individually, or ditches. But those are the main things that we're trying to do with this bond referendum, is try to help citizens solve issues that they experience during daily rainfall or when they have rainfall events. So any specific questions?
So this question would be $50 million, $50 million. And I can tell you, and Rick can tell you that, so $50 million is a lot of money, but this is our first significant foray into drainage. This board has allocated general fund dollars for a number of years towards smaller components and trying to figure out more specific issues. But this is our first significant, again, foray into what we know is a significant problem and one that's not going to go away anytime soon. And we'll also tell you that $50 million is not going to be the answer. This is a start to the answer. You'll likely see this question on future referenda as well going forward, that we continue to enhance upon the improvements that are done here. Any questions on the drainage question? Yes, ma'am.
Will there be anything about 3 Chop and how that floods and closes during heavy rains?
You want to get it? Sure. So I know the Public Works Transportation Development Division has been working on a widening project for all of 3 Chopped, starting over at Pemberton and going down behind West Broad Village. They will be adding curb and gutter and adding inlets and storm pipe to try to address some of the drainage issues that have been that people have been experiencing. The roads will be widened to 4 lanes with a median and have a sidewalk on it. But the inlets and storm pipe that are being added will address a lot of the issues that, from just having roadside ditches that were there previously, people were experiencing. This will help with that. So, and then as far as schedule-wise, I believe they're supposed to be moving to construction. Let's see here. I don't have an exact date on that. I need to check with Sharon Smiler on that. But I think it's supposed to be under construction, hopefully within, I know they were finishing up some of the 2023. Thank you, sir.
So since the late 60s, 3 Chop has been on the plan to be widened and the drainage issues solved. And finally, we're there. We had to take people to court to actually get them to negotiate with us so we can buy the easements to do the road. But we're there. If, as you guys see, as you drive up and down 3 Chop, you'll see the pink flags that's already marked out for where the utilities are going to move to. So thank goodness we're moving forward with it. So it's 2023. It should start.
And I think it's 2 construction cycles, so 2 years to complete construction.
But that flooding will be taken care of with the new design.
Excellent question. Any other questions about drainage? So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to end with, and I know we were in the 3 Chop Magisterial District, obviously. I want to show you just geographically where these projects are located. I know there have been some questions about that. It may be hard to see. There's also the same information on your brochure and on the website as well, but you can see that projects on this referendum strategically traverse the entire county, east, west, north, south, central. It would, if the questions are voted yes, you're seeing the locations of those projects on this. It doesn't show drainage specifically. They're still working on developing the list of drainage projects, and that'll come. It'll be forthcoming, but I can promise you it'll hit all 5 magisterial districts as we move forward. And I mentioned the website, and feel free to grab more information. There's a number of videos out there and some FAQs. And if you know anybody who's interested, A, in finding out more information, this is a great resource. But B, if there's a way, or if you want to get a group together, or if there's an HOA for a family member or something like along those lines that we can come out and talk to, we're happy to come out. We've had 124 meetings on the books, and that's growing every day. We'd love to make some time to come out and talk more. If you have any questions later, if you're thinking, man, I wish I had some time to ask that question, my email address is hin@henrico.us. Feel free to email me anytime. Also, there's a meeting this evening at the Eastern Henrico Recreation Center at 6 o'clock. That's a county-wide meeting. It'll be both in person there and also virtually. And feel free to come on and ask a question in that venue as well. But we're all grateful, Mr. Brandon. We're all grateful for the time and for the invite. Again, we always love coming here and having these conversations with you all. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Mr. Brandon. Yes.
One last statement. So the board has reviewed, considered said we may not put this forward because of the current situation with the economy nationally and worldwide, and we decided to go forward. But the key thing with going forward and putting this in a bond, plus there's only one election, so we were like, is anyone even going to come out and vote? So we decided to go forward. Key to this is we are asking permission to issue bonds. If we get that permission and the world turns upside down on its head, we will absolutely push pause. We'll never put this county in a bad situation, and that is our guarantee as a county to our citizens. Is there any more questions that I can answer? Yes, sir.
I think we're very fortunate to live in a well-managed county, and I'm proud of what y'all do.
And I know you guys are probably wondering why Deep Run's not done yet. I ask that question every day, and to the extent that Parks and Rec, I'm wearing them out. The contractor has had some supply chain issues. The last bond referendum was for trails, which will connect to here, to you all. Also, not part of the bond. We just did a freshening up. If you look at all of the pavilions have been painted and we're going back and replacing any wood that needs to be replaced. There's a bathroom in the back end that is almost done, and then there is a fitness center addition that is going on to the rec center. So that was, believe it or not, we were supposed to cut the ribbon for the bathroom and the rec addition this month, and we're nowhere near it. So the manager is on it, I'm on it. Hopefully I will get to see all of you out there in the next couple months, but I'll make sure that you all are notified. Also, thank you for allowing us to come in. If you want a state of the county, an update on what's going on with the roads, all you have to do is call the county and say, send that guy back out here because we have some questions, and I will be here. Thank you.
If I could leave you with one more thing, and I'm making sure we end all of these meetings with the same, but I don't think I have to tell this engaged group, but the last thing is please encourage your fellow folks that live here and your family who live here and everyone to go vote. I know there's one congressional item I mentioned earlier on the ballot, but this is a community, this is local government at its finest. This is boots on the ground. This is your community assets. Whether or not you agree with them at all, that's what the democracy, the democratic process is about. But please use that as a reason to go vote if you need one or if your neighbors need one. But that's the last thing I'll leave on. And again, thank you for your time. And we'll be around for a second if you have questions after. Mr. Brand, I think, is going to hang out too. So thank you again.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you taking your time and explaining everything. And I know that everyone appreciated you coming too. And we have recorded this so you can tell people to look on our website or our app for that. So please join me as we give them one more round of applause, please.